Really, it's a tour of every ancient history that went on here in America, from, like she said, Adamic history all the way through, Jaredite history and Nephite history, and then we have the U.S. history and church history. All of these histories are combined on this sacred covenant land. It's the very first book that I ever did was called Prophecies and Promises. And it's talking about how there's a covenant with God on this nation. It's the reason why we call it the Sacred Histories American Covenant Tour. Sacred Histories, because all of these histories were really foretold by God. And then the covenant part of it is important to understand that there's a covenant that started with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and continued on throughout every one of these histories. And we need to learn from those previous histories. And so that's one of the things that we do on this tour. Like Chris was saying, it's unique. There is no other tour like this. When we were first talking about doing something like this, I was really excited about it because we've been doing Book of Mormon tours and so forth. But Chris is a world-renowned, expert on the Knights Templar. And how many of you know about the posterity of Jesus Christ? And Christ had posterity. Joseph Smith was said to be a direct descendant of Jesus Christ. And he had posterity, and the Knights Templar had a lot to do with the protection of this sacred bloodline. These sacred bloodlines. Anyway, so I'll let that's Chris's kind of that's her forte. I'm the Book of Mormon evidence guy, so that's my forte. So how does the Book of Mormon fit into all this? And like I said, the very first book that I did was called Prophecies and Promises, and it goes in and talks about the prophecies that were made in the Book of Mormon of a latter-day nation that would be lifted up and raised up and set up in the last days. And they talked about that nation being a mighty Gentile nation above all other nations. And it talked about it being where the New Jerusalem would be built, and where it would be a land of liberty and a land of prosperity and so forth. All of those prophecies were in warning to this nation in the last days, not to go down the path that the other previous civilizations have gone down. That everything kind of starts on that East Coast. Every one of these civilizations began on the East Coast. Well, except for Adam and Eve, they started in the middle. Okay. But this East Coast idea. So we have the Jaredites came in, the Nephites came in, and so forth in this area. The Pilgrims and the Huguenots and and all of the different groups that came in from Europe came in on this East Coast. I got to say that last time when we went, there's several sites I'd never been to before, but Chris had been. And I want to share with you just a couple of things that, Chris was talking about what my favorite side of the tour. Honestly, I could rack my brain for the next 3 hours and not come up with which one I enjoyed the most. They are all important in their own particular way, in a sense. The hardest part is being able to make sense of them all in their individual context, because there's different time frames that we're talking about here, and you got to make sure that we're understanding what time frame we're talking about there. Anybody identify that building besides Chris? Chris, you can't say. Anybody know what that is? Well, you're in the same boat as I was when we first came up to this. This is something that Chris knew about, but I had no idea. But that's a pretty amazing building, and it is George Washington's Masonic Temple. And it's just in Alexandria. It's one of the first places that we go to. I had never even heard of it before. I mean, I kind of knew about it because we were doing the tour. I had never been there before. But this George Washington's Masonic Temple was just astounding to me. They made a massive mural that's inside of the main chamber, and it's showing the covenant that God made with this nation as George Washington took the oath of office on the day of his inauguration, and he placed his hand on the Bible in Genesis, and he put his right hand to the square, and he invoked a sacred covenant with God on this nation as its first rightful owner. And this is kind of depicting a little bit of that. There's a little bit showing here. Okay. This is the letter to the lodge. Let's see. This is some other things. So this is our group, or at least part of our group there at that time. This statue, I had a very personal experience with this. When we were there, I'm walking through this huge hall. Let me give you an idea of how big this is. Okay. Oh, there he is actually doing a trowel and so forth for the cornerstone of the national Capitol.
With his with his apron.
What's that?
With his apron on.
Yeah, I've got some close-ups of that. I wanted to show you that. Okay, this gives you an idea of the size of the hall that we're talking about inside of here. Can everybody see that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when we had our group there, as I walked up to that statue and looked up, and it's way up. The statue, I think, is 13.5 feet tall, and then he's standing on top of about an 8 or 9 foot tall base. So you're looking way up, and I think for the first time in my life, I had some inclination of the mighty and magnitude of the impact that George Washington had on this entire world, and specifically on the United States of America. It's just fascinating. So there's another picture of that. There's a closer picture with his apron there on, his Masonic apron. Many people don't know, most members of the church don't know the connections between Masonic rites and so forth. And how many of you knew that Joseph Smith was a Mason?
Yeah.
Okay. There's some really interesting connections and correlations between those, between Masonry and the gospel of Jesus Christ, the restored gospel. But here he has his apron on. And there's another picture. You can kind of see the apron there. Hey, there's somebody that we now recognize. That's Chris. See Chris there in the middle? Okay. The side view there of this. But okay, there's a little closer shot of the apron. I think I had one. There it is. Okay, there's a closer shot of the apron. So you see the flags in the background. You see the triangle and the stars and so forth, and this light bursting forth from behind the clouds. And then the two different flags there and so forth. There's a lot of symbolism in here, and Chris will tell you more about that on the tour, and also the tour guide does as well. But this is talking about the national Capitol, laying the cornerstone and so forth. Anyway, so I didn't want to go into too much there, but that was one of the places I thought was just absolutely phenomenal. That we had. There's laying the cornerstone. You see the guy with the red pillow? Okay, what does he have on that pillow?
Mm-hmm.
It is the Bible. And this is a depiction of when George Washington was taking his oath of office. How many of you know where the oath of office was taken by George Washington on the day of his inauguration?
It was in a church.
Okay, it was in Washington, D.C., right? No, because there was no Washington, D.C. at the time. This happened in New York at this place called the St. Mark's. I always call it the cathedral, but it's a chapel.
Well, he was sworn in at Federal Hall.
St. Paul's. Excuse me, St. Paul's. St. Paul's. Yeah. Did I say St. Mark?
Well,
St.
no.
Mark's is the lighthouse that we go to.
Well, he took the oath at Federal Hall and then walked to
Yes.
Paul's. Yeah.
Yes. But St. Paul's Chapel is really interesting because, and we actually are going to go there. We'll take you there. This is a place where the covenant was invoked on America, and basically it's the same covenant as the Abrahamic covenant, and that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. God makes covenants with his covenant nations. He made a covenant with Adam and Eve. He made a covenant with the brother of Jared. He made a covenant with Lehi's posterity. He made a covenant with George Washington at this place. And there's some really fascinating connections between that and what happened on 9/11, where the invocation of the covenant, the covenant has, the Abrahamic covenant has 4 parts, which, by the way, those 4 parts, has anybody heard me talk about this covenant before?
Yeah.
I'll just very quickly, there's four primary pieces of the covenant. There's the land covenant that talks about a special land. Then the people of the covenant are going to be blessed with posterity, children. They're going to be blessed with prosperity, or in other words, they're going to be financially able to do what they need to do. I'm going to tell you what they need to do in just a second. And then the last one is they're blessed with security. Those four, I got 4 fingers up there. So that's 4 parts of the covenant: the land, posterity, prosperity, and security. And the reason why those 4 parts of the covenant are there, because Abraham was given a charge. He was said that the gospel would go forth from his posterity to all the other nations of the world. So they're going to need those 4 blessings. And so with those blessings come sacred responsibilities, because they're getting special blessings. And when a nation begins to dwindle and begins to ignore God and his covenants and so forth, then what happens is that God has to start to withdraw those covenants. And amazingly enough, scripturally speaking, he always does it in reverse order. So there's some really cool things we're going to talk about that involve 9/11, the place of the invocation of the covenant with God. We're going to stand in that place. And then we're going to also be able to stand and witness 2 gigantic holes in the ground where the judgments of God came upon our nation in the same location where the covenant was made. The judgments of God were manifest. And it's really, really powerful. Okay, so I have 1,200 pictures in here, so I'm going to turn some time back over to Chris for just a second while I find the next set of pictures, and then we'll go from there. That sound good? Let me
Yeah.
stop sharing.
I just
Okay.
wanted to add to what Rod was just saying. And again, this is what makes our tour so unique, because there's very few tour companies that do American history tours that go to New York City. Okay, very few people even realize there's Revolutionary War, American founding of our country happening in New York City. And they're really, as Rod just explained, they're very, very critical. And it all happens down in that Wall Street, lower bottom of Manhattan is where this takes place. But just from where Rod was talking about, you just walk up a little bit north from Federal Hall, and you're at the City Hall, at the actual New York City Hall area. And that's the place where Nathan Hale was hung. And he was one of the first ones to be hung as a spy. And if you remember, he said, I have one regret, that I only have one life to give for my country. Young man, amazing, amazing man that was willing to be one of the first spies to help overthrow the tyranny that the colonists were experiencing at that time. So there's lots of history. In fact, we'll have an opportunity to go to Fraunces Tavern, which is still standing down in that same area of the Wall Street, lower Manhattan area. But that is where George Washington met with his commanding officers when he was leaving them to go back to Mount Vernon, and the war had been finished. And you will be able to go up into that room and see how they've recreated what that room would have looked like. It's a museum, and then downstairs is the eating area of that tavern, but that still stands. And most people are just walking by it every day, have no idea what the historical content is. So we actually do a lot of Washington information when we're in New York. It's a really amazing experience, because it's nice to know that you can go to New York City and not have to worry about being on Broadway and on the Upper East Side as much, but you get down on the lower bottom Battery Park area, and there's fantastic history to explore. So that's part of it too, I think, that you'll find pretty surprising. So Rod, where do you want to go next with this?
So speaking of Mount Vernon,
There we go.
let's go ahead and go there. Here we go. So this was last year. Okay, hopefully you can see this now. Can you see that? Now, when we went there last year, it was a little bit of a bummer, because all around on the outside was all of this scaffolding and everything, and they had a lot of things, kind of cordoned off, because guess what? They're preparing for you guys this year. So this is they're celebrating 250 years since America's founding, and let's see if we can get this to do that. Let's see. There we go. There we go. That's one. So there's George Marshall right there to greet you as you walk into the visitor center. This is Mount Vernon. How many of you have been to Mount Vernon before? Anybody?
Nope.
I don't see any hands going up or whatever. So, but this is as you can see, you see all of that, the construction stuff going on in the front there. They have scaffolding on that right-hand side and on the left-hand side. They're getting this prepared for the big 250th party of Mount Vernon. There's a big tree there that they can see. They made it at least kind of look a little bit like bricks or something, and they had temporary access and so forth going to it. It was really phenomenal to see that. This is some of the rooms that you'll see as you go in there. But one of my favorite parts of Mount Vernon was actually, I mean, there's the view here over the Potomac River. This is they had it's really fascinating. George Washington wanted to put a good face on Mount Vernon for people coming from Europe who are used to these big castles, with all this marble and cut stone and everything. And he was kind of a frontiersman, right? So they actually would take wood, mold it, and then put like sand mixed with a cement and make it look like it was stone, even though it wasn't, because he didn't have the money to do that. I just love that he wanted to have a nice place, kind of like, I mean, not to bring up politics or whatever, but kind of like having a nice ballroom, at the White House to be able to entertain people. George Washington wanted to be able to entertain people in a way that projected the importance of America. So they were ripping out this lath and plaster and so forth there. The place that I wanted to show you here was right here. Anybody have an idea what this might be? This is George Washington's resting place. This is where he is. His body has been laid to rest permanently. And you notice the two pillars on the sides. Any symbolism there? Well, we're going to talk about that symbolism. If you don't already know the symbolism, then you're gonna love this part, because there's major symbolism between that. This is actually between the wise and the justice of some of our people there. It's me and Chris. But inside of that is the crypt that George Washington has been laid there to rest. So that's kind of looking through there. George and Martha's over there in the corner there a little bit. This is the tomb of George Washington. And anyway, so it's fascinating to see the symbolism even in his death of what he stood for, and the way that he wanted this to be. He designed and had this built before he passed away, specifically for his burial. So he actually had a hand. Well, he was the major part of actually getting that done. And we watched some fox chasing going on. Let me see. There was that one last thing I was going to try to get to. Let's see. They do reenactments now. Last year they did a little bit of this. Supposedly they're going to have way more of this year. If you guys have picked probably the best time in the next 50 years to go and see these sacred sites. So it's going to be fantastic to be a part of that. All right, let me go to the next thing. Chris, you want to take that for a second, and I'll get to the next images there that I wanted to share.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So with the Mount Vernon, we were there and didn't get to see all of the interior of Mount Vernon because of the restoration. But when we come and visit in June, which is when we do our tour, you'll be able to see all of the rooms as they were originally restored, and now they've all been refurbished. So it's a really an exciting time to have access to that. And one thing that's interesting is Rod is showing you the tomb. They had plans to bury George Washington in the U.S. Capitol. I don't know if many of you know that or not, but there's actually a tomb in the basement that was set aside for George Washington because they kind of were thinking that Capitol was almost like a with the dome. And if you've ever been in there, have any of you been in the U.S. Capitol? But up in the dome, there's a painting that is of George Washington as if in the heavens. But the idea was they wanted him there, the people, but he wanted to be at Mount Vernon. That was where his heaven on earth was. And he didn't want, I mean, he was fine serving the people, but he loved the land and he loved being at home and being on his own plantation. And so, of course, he ended up being buried there. And, he got to be in charge of what he wanted there at that time.
Okay, so we go on a little bit further. Chris, let me go ahead and do this real quick then.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
Going on to this. So some of you I think all of you will recognize this place, right? So there's the Capitol building. This is the Library of Congress. Let's see if we can get to this here. So this is the Library of Congress, and look at last year, that was our view of it. All under cleaning and so forth. That's all going to be gone this year because they're making everything pristine for the 250th anniversary of our great country. There's another picture of the Capitol building here. And then this is the Jefferson Memorial. Now, more than likely, if you've been to Washington, D.C. area, you've probably been to the Jefferson Memorial before. But this was really kind of a special occasion for me. The wind was in there pretty good there. Sorry. But I love these walls that have some of the iconic sayings of Jefferson. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Or Almighty God created the mind free and attempts to influence it by temporal punishments or brethren, or burthens, our departure from the plan of the holy author of our religion. I mean, just there's so much great stuff. God, who gave us life, gave us liberty. Can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God? These men were great individuals, and the Lord, in fact, told Joseph Smith in Revelations, or in some of his revelations, that he raised up men specifically for the establishment of this nation. That has never been done before, as far as we know. That's the first time that God ever said that he specifically raised up individuals of highest morality, highest character, highest values, to be the founders of our nation. So anyway, I just love being up there, going to the big rotunda there. That's a nice picture from there to the Washington Monument on the other side of the area there. You're going to see Washington, D.C. from a lot of places. And guess what, everybody? Crime is almost gone there. Right? The crime rate in Washington, D.C. last year is a lot different than it will be this year, because it's been cleaned up big time, as I understand. So this is a great time to be there. It'll also be one of the safest times to be in Washington, D.C. So that's a good thing as well. Again, of course, there's the Washington Monument here. Then we have the Lincoln Memorial here. It just happened to be kind of a fun time when we were there. Look at the weather. I mean, this is a great time of the year to be there, to see that. The wind was kicking up, but when the wind's not kicking up, you can see the obelisk in the reflecting pool, and it is just stunning to see how beautiful it is. We've been to Versailles in France, and a lot of Washington, D.C. was based off of the ideas behind Versailles in France. And there's so much symbolism even built into the streets, and the way the avenues align each other and so forth. It's we're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff about that. And there's Brother Lincoln and some of his amazing works and so forth here. So anyway, there's some of the different things there. And then I wanted to get to the Washington Monument, as of course it's that a lot of people don't know this, but the Washington Monument is the tallest building in Washington, D.C., and always will be. Did you know that?
Mhm.
Did you notice that there's no other big skyscrapers in Washington, D.C., like there is in New York and Boston and other places? Because by law, no building can be built taller than the Washington Monument. Anybody know what's at the top of the Washington Monument? It has an aluminum piece, a cap piece. It's about like this. Well, it's about like, it's about like that big. Okay. You can get an idea. It's got four sides. It comes up to a point, and on it is engraved certain engravings that they placed on that. And one of them is Laus Deo. Anybody know what Laus Deo means? It basically is God be with us, or God watch over us in Latin. So it's a fascinating thing, because that's what they wanted to have. The thing that's closest to Creator was God watch over us, watch over this great nation, and keep it safe. And that's what's at the top of the Washington Monument. But you won't ever hear that from the National Park Service or the park rangers that are there to do the tours and so forth, because they ignore that part. It's stunning. This is, and that you might recognize this place here in the background. There is the White House. And so this year we'll probably be able to see some of the walls of the new ballroom going up here on that left-hand side. Okay. The Trump ballroom coming up there. Some of our great people here are excited about being there, and there it is. So this year, I think Chris said she's going to arrange for us to meet with President Trump while we're there. I think, is that right?
Yes, yep, I'm trying to get word in through whoever it can be, but I did want to let him know that that will be one of the things we try to prioritize, is access to a White House tour. However, those are really
Hard to get.
they're hard to get based on what is going on in the White House. And so we could even be approved and be scheduled for it, and then at the last minute they can take it away, depending on if they've got other people have come in, or or for whatever reason they have that ability to do it. So, but we're going to try anyway and see if we can get access to a White House tour.
Yep. Okay, so kind of the next thing I wanted to show you guys was the Benjamin Franklin Museum and so forth, but I want to get to here. Okay, there we go. This is the one I wanted to get to, so let me get over to you guys here. And okay, now can you see this one? They should be able to see that, right? You see that now, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is this? This is Independence Hall. And you can see the big green screen on the bottom right-hand side of the picture. Again, here they are. They're under construction, waiting for you guys to come this year, when they're going to have it all pristine and looking really sweet. So I'm excited about being able to have you be a part of this with us. So there's another picture of that. I thought this was kind of a fun picture. You take $100 bill, you pull it out, and guess what's on the back of it? So there's the Independence Hall on the $100 bill, and there's Independence Hall in the background. So if you have $100, you can pull that out and take your own picture this summer. And here's some of the group there.
Has the clock tower on it, so it has the time.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So here's some of the group there. Here's inside. This is one of the rooms. This is the one when you first walk in. It's on the right hand side, and this one. So this one's kind of a tan colored room. The green room is the one where most of the signing happened. So this is where you see that there's the chair up there. The chair has motifs and so forth on it. The whole thing is just absolutely amazing. Most of the structure is original. In fact, there's a staircase that goes up. If you can take a look at the chair, it has that I think that's the original chair that has a carving in the back of the chair. It's kind of a sunburst design. And you remember the conversation that Benjamin Franklin had? He said, is that a setting sun or is that a rising sun? And he said it was definitively a rising sun for the rising, the beginning of a great nation that's now celebrating the 250th anniversary this year. There's our guide guy. That staircase, that volute, that's original. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and so many of these great men literally put their hands on those actual pieces of wood when they're going up and down these stairs in the Independence Hall.
Rod?
Yeah.
I'm going to just interject here because
Yeah.
we've got 3 other histories to
Yep,
cover
we gotta
in
cover this.
20 minutes. And so I think we need to move. I mean, we obviously, I mean, the American History 250th anniversary is a big part of the tour, but honestly, we've got so much more to share with
Oh, yeah.
the church history portion, the Book of Mormon. So wherever you want to go next, Rod, or Knights Templar.
Yeah, should we
You've
do
got
that? I can show you some pictures of New York, and you could talk about it, Chris, if you want to do that. Do you want to do that?
Well, are we going to do church history?
Yeah, I guess if we have 20 minutes left, we better probably get to that.
Yeah.
But,
So what we'll do this makes our tour different than other tours, like Rod had mentioned before. We are going to places, church history places that are more out of the way, that most people get to a lot of the mainstream New York, upper New York. We're going to go through the Colesville stake area, and the Colesville branch was the first branch established in the Mormon church, in the LDS church. Is the Mormon church back then, but it was the branch. And I'm telling you, this was one of my most favorite spots because I've read church history and been studying it. And they always talk about how stalwart these saints were. Like they never left. They were strong. They were convicted in conviction, not convicted, but they were strong in their conviction of the Lord. And you find out when you visit, I believe it's the Stoll home, Josiah Stoll's home, and that's where they were congregating, and they would meet in the home, and if it got too many people, they went across the street to the barn. But these saints that lived at this Colesville branch had a witness of Christ, a personal witness, and it's so powerful. And you go there and they give you a written document of his testimony of what they saw and what they heard, and they were stalwart. They never strayed. And it's powerful to go to a place where you know the Savior has been there. He was witnessed by other people in that area, and that had been a big desire of mine to get up into that area because of that history. And then from there we go down into Harmony, Pennsylvania, which is of course the site of the priesthood restoration and where the courtship of Joseph Smith and Emma starts taking place. And you've got those sites, and the Susquehanna is a beautiful setting, the river there. And again, have any of you been to the Harmony? It's only about 30 miles. Okay, Guy has. Okay, 30 miles south of that Colesville area. The Colesville branch goes down into Harmony. And we've got some really interesting church history site that's not, I've got access to some historical records that talk about some really interesting church histories in that area, but you'll be amazed. And so between that and then we take you up to Vermont. So again, we're going up north, further north, but we go to the birthplace of Joseph Smith. And again, that is a very sacred site. He's the only Smith that is born on that homestead site. And there is a lot of energy. I would say it's a nexus point between heaven and earth. He's born on the winter solstice. There's so much symbology tied to his birth. And we have a chance to go. Has anybody been to the Vermont birth site of Joseph Smith? Okay. Oh, there we go. George has been there.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And that actually overlaps. That site overlaps with American history because they were big. The Smith family was really big on um, the American history. They had ancestors that fought in the Revolutionary War. Their back property in that, oh gosh, it's like a forest. You go down there and it's just all this forested area, and they still have the homestead sites of the grandfather Solomon. And these individuals were right next to a trail. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is that backs up on their property, but it was a main trail through the Revolutionary War going through that area at that time. So there's kind of an overlap of history in that particular area in and of itself. And then, of course, we do make it to Palmyra and see the traditional sites that we see there. But you're going to experience some of the out of the way places that a lot of our LDS faithful don't get a chance to visit because they're more out of the way.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I want to put this up and then have you talk a little bit about this. This is a place that I had not been to before, but I had heard about it. I've heard a lot about it. In fact, it was on the History Channel. It's been and lots of different things here. But anybody recognize this? This is along the way as we're going, but this is the Newport Tower, and it has to do with the.
Right. So this kind of jumps into it. So yeah, we leave church history, and this is where we start talking about Knights Templar, and we're talking about a period of time in the 14th century. So around 13, I want to say it's 1370, or it may even be a little bit earlier, but it's almost 100 years before Columbus even comes to this new world. And it ties into Rosslyn Chapel, okay? And Rosslyn Chapel is over in Scotland, and you might be going, well, what does that have to do with Newport, Rhode Island, and the Newport Tower? But we'll also be visiting another site that's a Templar site, and it's in Westfield, Massachusetts. And there is I'm trying to think what you would call them, the Knights Templar, Henry Sinclair, who is from the St. Clair line, that supposedly was one of the original knights that went into Jerusalem that had access. Now, we're not talking about the Crusaders, we're talking about the Knights Templar. There were 9 knights originally in around 1090 that had access to get into Jerusalem and dig tunnels. And the story is, the tradition is that they were able to find treasure by digging these tunnels and going under Solomon's temple. So there's been an idea that they possibly at one point in time were caretakers of the Ark of the Covenant, that they were caretakers of the Shroud of Turin and other holy relics, because they were warriors for Christ. The Knights Templar were dedicated to their service and to protecting not only Jesus and Mary, but the lineage of Jesus and Mary, and any of the holy relics that would be attached to that, or any teachings that would come from that early stage of Christianity. And St. Clair is supposedly one of those knights. And then back in the 13th or 14th century, in the 1300s, you've got Henry, who takes an expedition to the New World. And why are they going to the New World? Well, there's a big power. There's a big power force with the Catholic Church controlling with the kingdoms, the different kings. They control most of Europe. And so the Knights Templar, they'd had their big day in France in 1307 when they had all been arrested, but lots of them moved away, and somehow the treasure that the prince, not the prince, but the king of France, Philip the Innocent, and the Pope Clement was looking for, that got taken out days before the big Friday the 13th event in 1307. And so the treasure left France. And that's been a big mystery ever since. And there's traditions of it going up into Scotland. And a lot of the Knights Templar that didn't get arrested went to Scotland and went to Portugal because those were safe havens for them to go to. And they weren't going to turn them in or do anything to them. That was a safe area for them to go into. And from there, they started doing these expeditions to the New World because they were trying to get away from this tyrannical rule of the Catholic Church. Okay. There was a certain dogma that the church was, they had their certain,
Foisting on the people.
forcing it on the people. But I mean, not only the Knights Templar, but I mean, we can talk about the Cathars in France who were actually exterminated. There was genocide at the hands of the Catholic Church in the 13th century, from 1220 to 12, almost into the beginning of the 1300s. Thousands and thousands of people were murdered, men, women, and children, simply because they had a different belief than the Catholic Church. And the idea is that these were actually followers of Jesus and Mary. And they had a whole different theology, and women were equal to men. Okay. And that was a threat to the Catholic Church. Okay. And they were becoming very popular, and the nobility in France, in the Occitan area, the women loved the idea that women are equal, because you have to realize for a long time, women, especially in the Jewish faith and other areas, are subservient to men, right? They're not out in public. They're not teachers. So this idea that women can be teachers is what Christ taught. That's what Christ was establishing, that women are equal to men. Men are not more than a woman, okay? And even when he was establishing that, Paul is one, for example, in the Apocrypha, has a problem with that. Like, oh gosh, are we supposed to listen to women now? That's what he says in the scripture. And because that was not the tradition. So I diverge a little bit on that, but the Knights Templar were following these teachings as well. Bernard de Clairvaux is their spiritual guide, and they're following these types of teachings that are different from what the Catholic Church is teaching. And they realize they've gotten as far as Portugal. You can't go anywhere else but the Atlantic Ocean. So they start going to the New World, but they're going, 100 years before Christopher Columbus set sail. How do we know that? Because when you visit Ross Chapel, you're going to see carvings. It's a very innate chapel, and we take tours that go to Scotland to see this. But they have plant life that only exists in the American continent. It's not in Europe at that time. And this chapel was finished in 1444. And so, okay, well, Columbus went over in 1492. So how did this chapel that was completed in 1444 end up with plants that are in North America? Okay, that's the quandary. So they know that William Sinclair took an expedition over. They were up in the Canadian area, Newfoundland, that part. They did get as far south as Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and they've left their footprint. That's what we're going to be looking at when we go on this tour. So it's a really fascinating piece of American history that most people have no idea exists.
That's the reason why we go to this tower, for example, because that's right there in Rhode Island, like Chris just mentioned. It has both solar and lunar alignments. That's why I had a bunch of pictures showing how the solstices and so forth that shine through the specific areas in the tower at certain points of time in the year. So these are equinoxes and solstice points. rising and setting of the moon and the sun. Here's a bunch of different images showing different ones going on there. This is our guide. A couple of things I wanted to really just touch on just before we get too far along here, or before we're done. This is you probably can see this one, but do you see the ship there? Okay, that's part of the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. This is one of the ships out there, and then a lot of people have been there. Probably a lot of you have, maybe some of you have actually been to Plymouth Rock, which is right next to this. They're literally just, you walk from one to the next. But there's another monument that very few people know about. I think, who was it that did they did a documentary about this? And I'm going to show you this. So this is Plymouth Rock right there. There it is in the position there. Okay. And then we went over to this place. Now, how many of you have heard of the National Monument to the Forefathers? So it was Cameron. What's his name? Chris, help me out there. It's Cameron something Cameron.
It'll come to me.
Anyway,
The documentary.
he did a documentary about this because he went out there just like we did, and he just happened to stumble onto it, and it wasn't on any of the placards or anything. It was like completely left off. And it's Kirk Cameron.
Kirk Cameron.
Kirk Cameron. Yeah, if you look it up, it's called. The show is called Monumental, and it's just a phenomenal show. But look at this. This thing is all under construction. They got the construction equipment out there. They're working on it for this year. So when we got there, it had construction, fencing, and so forth around it. We had to, tear some of it down and go in there anyway. But right, Chris? Or do you want to admit that?
I was disappointed because we weren't able to get up close because of that. But it was. It'll be ready for us this year.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. But here's some of the things about law and liberty and education and so forth. It is a massive statue, monument that's been put up out there, and hardly anybody knows about it. That's actually a Urim and Thummim on the depiction of the 12 tribes and so forth there. And anyway, I absolutely just love that. I thought it was one of the coolest places that we went to. Another place though was the bridge and so forth that we went to. The bridge that they talked about, the Minuteman. I'm kind of blasting through some of this stuff, but let me just get really. We followed Paul Revere's ride. Actually, we got to take the bus and go along the ride of Paul Revere and do some of that. Here's me and some of the Minutemen. But I wanted to get to the America's Stonehenge. Anybody ever heard of America's Stonehenge? It's coming up here pretty quick. I just keep blasting through these real quick here. We'll get to it. But America's Stonehenge. Okay. So this is actually, that's the bridge. The shot that was heard around the world. That's where that happened. The red coats were on the side that we're on right here, and the Minutemen were on the other side. We're going to tell you all about that. There's the bridge. There's the Minuteman statue that goes along with that. Okay, so let's get to
what we have to do. We've only got about 5 minutes left. So
okay, yep. All right. Well,
Mormon real quick, and then wrap up what we're going to offer on the tour.
Okay, yeah. So basically, it comes down to the Book of Mormon stuff. When we get to Palmyra and we go to the Hill Cumorah, we'll talk about the symbolism and things that went on with that. It is maybe just as a wrap up, rather than trying to cover so much stuff. If you want to go to the itinerary and look at some of these things, there's really nothing like this. You're going to see more American history sites and church history sites and Book of Mormon related sites. The Book of Mormon sites are typically more further west and south, and like in Ohio and Missouri and so forth. There are some Book of Mormon related things in New York. We're going to take you and show you many of you may not know, but did you know that through the Sacred Grove, there are ancient Native American walls of stone that literally go through the Sacred Grove and wrap around in front of the Palmyra Temple. And we're going to show you those things and let you take a look and ponder those things. It's just really is fascinating to see all of this history. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and give this back here to you guys, but just let me just for last thing, and we want to have some question and answers if you'd like to ask some questions and so forth. But I'll just say that for me, having been to most of these sites previously, with my family and other things, it makes such a difference to go on a guided tour. And especially when you have tour guides like Chris, and hopefully I add some to that as well, but to be able to know why it is that what you're looking at is important and how that plays and fits into the whole world history, and how the restored gospel of Jesus Christ has such beautiful symbolism. And that symbolism, you're going to find that symbolism all throughout the early architecture of America. It is just amazing to see how these people know. Like just a quick example, right in the St. Paul Chapel in New York is a little small monument inside the chapel, and on the top of it is a symbol, and that symbol is the Yod He Vah He symbol. It's the mystic symbol is actually there in the chapel that was there at the time of George Washington. So I hope that you'll come with us and participate in this. It's going to be a phenomenal time. I promise you that we're going to do our very best to make it the most informative, exciting. It's fun. It's going to be a little bit of a walk. That we have some walking to do. so get yourselves in good shape to be able to do a little bit of walking. But I tell you what, I don't think there's anything like this anywhere else in the world.
Thank you, Rod. Well, lots to cover. As you can see, we can't even take an hour to get through all of the history, because there's just so much. Every day is just packed with something new that you'll learn, and we're very excited about it. And so we're wanting to let you know how this works. In fact, Jill, I don't have my handout right in front of me, but what is the actual tour cost off the top of? I don't have that in front of me. Can she? Okay, so the tour is inclusive of
$4,000. My apologies. Couldn't get that on mute.
Okay, so it's a $4,000 tour, and that's for it's a 13-day. I wanted to add that besides Rod and myself as guides that are with you the whole entire tour, we are hiring local guides that are experts in that particular history, especially on the American history side of it, at different sites. So, and it's fun because a lot of them dress up in character, and they go into totally that era of time. So you're going to have other tour guides besides us along the way. But yeah, all of that's included. We have the dates for this is June
5th through the 18th.
Yeah, June 5th through the 18th. And it does not include airfare, so you would need to get your airfare for the tour. But it includes breakfast every day. We've got a couple of dinners. We've got some lunches along the way. But that $4,000 covers the transportation, the guides, the hotels, and also the only thing not included would be tips for the guides on the tour itself, Rod and myself, and for the driver. Okay, and we're going to offer a special if you're interesting people. We're going to give you a special deal. If you're interested, we have a special to offer you tonight, and that is $100 off the cost of the tour. And that would be good from now until midnight on January 19th. And so if you get yourself signed up and with a deposit at this point, right? Yeah,
Correct,
then,
$100 per person.
yeah, $300 per person, then we can give you $100 off the final cost of the tour. So, are there any questions that we can answer for you real quickly before we drop off?
What about if we've already booked? Do we get
Yes.
$100 off?
Yes, we can honor that for you as well.
Yeah.
I'm making a note here, but don't be afraid to ask me if you don't see it.
All right.
You just have to be extra interesting.
You're interesting.
Okay, good. Well, you get that then, yes. Any other questions that we can answer before we drop off?
What
Oh,
about
I just
airfare?
want to
Are
let you know,
trying
we
to
do
get
have,
airfare?
we do
Hold
have,
on, hold on just a second.
Sorry.
we do
Question?
have,
Did
we
you want
do-
me to- I
oh, go
was
ahead.
wondering if you were gonna try to get airfare for us.
Yes, I will ask again. The last time I requested, Delta didn't have a very good rate for us. So I will request again, but sometimes we don't have enough people coming from Salt Lake that are interested, or Delta doesn't give us a good enough deal. So but we will follow up on that.
Okay.
We wanted to let you know, if you refer anyone to the tour that isn't a current client with us, you will also get a $25 referral fee to go towards your total cost of the tour to get a discount.
Hey, Chris, can I mention something else? And that is, and I know this is, Jill knows this as well, but I'll tell you what, because of the level of interest of Americans wanting to go and see these sacred sites this summer for the 250th anniversary, it has been just pretty crazy to even find hotels and find that stuff. So I want my hats off to Jill for trying to get these hotels and stuff set up. Man, things are already booked out. You just try to go book a hotel somewhere near Boston, near Philadelphia, near New York on your own, and they'll tell you right now they're full. They're just full. So it's pretty cool to be able to go on the tour and know that you're gonna have a place to stay at night when you're there. You know, it's and I have to say that you know, I've worked with Legacy Tours for a number of years now, and I've been on other tours and so forth, and I'll tell you, they have their stuff together. It is really nice to work with them, and we've never had any issues when we've gone to a place, you know, and all of a sudden the hotel says, well, who are you and why are you showing up here? Or you go to, you know, finding a place for a big tour group to go and eat in places like New York and Boston and Philadelphia is not a simple task. I mean, you know, it's packed. There's tons of people. So it's they just do a wonderful job. I just wanted to do a little shout out here to Jill, and her team does a great job over here. So I appreciate
Thanks,
that very
Rod.
much. You're in good hands. Good hands.
Thanks. We love working with you as well.
All right, Mitchell,
yeah,
you look like you got a question. No?
I can ask a question, but I'm sure it's not. So I'm signed up to go to the Book of Mormon one in September.
Nice. Okay.
So doing a presentation for that.
We
Yeah,
we
well,
should.
Yeah. Yeah, we should do that. Yeah.
No
That's
big.
that's the chronology tour, correct?
Yeah, is that what it's called? From that's
Florida.
the
Yes.
Book of Heartland one. Yeah. If
Yeah,
there's
that's a good one too. That one is pretty much focused just on Book of Mormon, and it's one of my very favorite tours. You know, I love working with Chris though on this one. This one has a lot more of the American Covenant stuff. We will talk about American Covenant stuff on the other tour as well, because this American Covenant thing follows through every one of the civilizations over the course of time. Yeah, all the way from Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, all the way through. So it is a fascinating subject, and in fact, yeah, there's some really cool things we'll be able to talk about while we're on the tour that they're just right now they're just kind of getting finalized and so forth. But there's going to be a big push to educate the membership of the church on this sacred covenant stuff by not just myself, but a whole group of people who are putting this together. So it's going to be awesome.
The chronology tour is awesome.
Yeah, guy knows.
Awesome.
See, that's what I thought this presentation was about, is the chronology tour. Because that's what Tammy and I are signed up for. But this has been fascinating. I've been impressed.
We'll do
with the
both.
Information. Well, getting time off and affording it, that's two different things.
All you need to do is rob a bank. I mean, come on.
Yeah, or
She's on the city council, Rod. She can't do that.
Oh. No. Don't be telling me that city councils can't rob from the people. I mean, just look at Minnesota.
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to go there.
I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't say that, but anyway, yeah, just
Well-
talk to Tim Walls. You know, he's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch that. Well, it's been a wonderful evening. I know we've already lost a few, and that's we understand. If there are questions that didn't get answered tonight, please email or give us a call so we can answer those for you. One question was about another date for the tour. We don't have one planned currently, so we're just focusing on this one.
Yeah, 50 years from now, 50 years from now, we'll have another one. Save your shekels.
Imagine what we look like 50 years from now.
Be the
Yeah.
300-year anniversary, and the nice thing about that one is probably we'll be able to tour with Christ maybe over there too. So he'll be back by
Sounds like a
then.
good plan.
We'll have to because we won't be here otherwise.
Right.
Well, if
I
there's any way,
agree.
if there's any way that Tammy and I could swing it, we'd sure love to do both. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Well,
they're both really
we'll
good.
we'll get with Rod, and I think a chronology virtual meeting would be helpful. So we'll talk about that and make sure that you're aware of it.
You bet.
Very good. Very good.
We may have to do this one again. 'Cause I didn't get this information out to our base.
Oh, okay.
So I need we didn't have time to get the email and so forth out for
We
this. so-
can, yeah. There is a recording, so maybe you can send that out.
Oh, yeah, good idea. Yep, perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. I look
All
forward to
right,
seeing
thank
you guys.
Thanks for joining us.